Many people consider the PlayStation 2 or the PS2 era, which ran from 2000 to the mid-2000s, one of the most prosperous times for JRPGs. Building on the popularity of the PS1, which had established JRPGs as a staple of the world's gaming culture, the PS2 served as a platform for innovation, in-depth storylines, and technological improvement. Massive install bases allowed developers to experiment with new creative and mechanical approaches. Game design is still influenced by the PS2 period, which expanded the genre and left a legacy of narrative-driven epics and system-heavy titles. Hello everyone, my name is Fedro and this is cozyfeji, and on this channel we cover a variety of things such as video essays, reviews, JRPGs, and all things cozy gaming. Now this past year, my brother decided to let me take his modded PS2 that he got a couple years back, and it definitely made me feel really nostalgic for the console because we grew up with the PS2 and have a lot of fond memories with it. But I wasn't really a JRPG lover that I am today when I was like a child. So when I was looking up some more games to add to my PS2 collection, I kind of went down in a rabbit hole and kind of realized that the PS2 was like the golden time to be a JRPG fan. There were so many games coming out for the console, so many different types of subgenres within the JRPG genre itself. I feel like a lot of the developers were pushing the boundaries and experimenting more with stories and characters and designs and gameplay mechanics that we just don't get to see often these days. However, again, like I mentioned before, it's kind of like a JRPG boom at the moment, but I definitely do think that the PS2 era was truly an era to be a part of, and I really wish I got to be, because honestly back then I was only playing a lot of platformers like Sly Cooper, I was playing Ratchet and Clank, Marvel Alliance, games of that nature. I was not playing any of those JRPGs. The only JRPG I knew at the time was maybe some Final Fantasy, but I definitely did hear about Kingdom Hearts. So today this is kind of like a video for not just you guys, but a video for me as well, to go down this rabbit hole and to do more digging on why the PS2 era was the place to be at as a JRPG fan, and also just a gamer as in general. So today we're going to talk about that. One key factor contributing to the boom of JRPGs during the PS2 era was a significant hardware upgrade the console provided. The PS2 made more sophisticated 3D rendering capabilities possible, enabling more intricate character models, large-scale environments, and fluid animations. Thanks to this advancement in technology, game developers were able to produce more immersive games than those for the PS1. With the PS2, JRPGs were able to move from pre-rendered backgrounds to completely 3D settings, offering players a more immersive and liberating experience. The flawless setting of Final Fantasy X and the intricate fighting arenas of Shadow Heart's Covenant are two notable examples. More complex warfare systems, frequently with complex dynamics that were previously challenging to design owing to the hardware limits, were made possible by the improved hardware. So when the PS2 came out, it was really truly a revolutionary console in terms of graphics and hardware. No other console at the time, maybe the Sega Saturn, I would like to think was pushing out graphics like the PS2 was, and with this kind of new graphical overhaul, a lot of developers are utilizing that and being able to tell a lot of stories that they couldn't do on just the 16 to 32-bit or 64-bit, styles back in the 64 or the SNES era. So with the PS2, it just allowed a huge playing field for these developers to really just expand and push the boundaries of what gaming could possibly do. And especially in the mid-2000s and early 2000s, there were so many creative ideas. And honestly, can we also talk about the aesthetics of the PS2 era games? The vibes, the feel, and even the cover art for a lot of these PS2 games were absolutely chef's kiss. I live for that aesthetic. The whole Y2K early 2000s vibe was truly peak. And I really do think that a lot of the developers, or whether it be the graphic developers or more, I think this is more leaning to the graphic designers, aren't really pushing the boundaries. I just don't really see cover art and or box art on these games. I'm just like, that's beautiful. I mean, I do say that's beautiful, but I'm just like, not like, oh my god, amazing. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys understand, but I just truly think that era was just so avant-garde, so experimental, so out there, and very experimental, and truly something remarkable and something to put respect on for sure. And I feel like when you put that extra step to make those creative and beautiful, not just box art and graphic designs, but also when that design is being translated into the game, it really pulls the player to get into it. Because I know they say never judge a book by its cover, but let's be real, when you look at a box art of a game and you don't know anything about it, that's definitely going to be something that will at least push you or get you intrigued nonetheless. But I feel like the PS2 era truly was peak in terms of aesthetics. Although telling stories has always been at the heart of JRPGs, there was a noticeable shift in this aspect throughout the PS2 period. To create more emotionally compelling stories and multi-layered character arcs, developers frequently tackled difficult subjects like existentialism, identity, and fate. For example, the character Titus in Final Fantasy X tackled issues of faith, sacrifice, and cyclical devastation through an epic and intense personal journey. Its creative voice acting, which was a first for the mainline Final Fantasy series, enhanced the impact of the story by giving the characters a more complex and lifelike feel. In the meantime, social simulation was interwoven with darker themes of mortality, sadness, and the certainty of death in the Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3. Players were greatly affected by the game's unique fusion of dungeon crawling and high school life, which produced an intensely emotional experience. And like I mentioned before, since we had such a huge graphic overhaul, there's also just a huge overhaul on the hardware, and there's more space and more time to make those stories that they never got to back in the early days of the SNES or early PC titles. With the PS2 and consoles like the PS2, a lot of developers got to push the boundaries and tell stories that they were never able to and expand on that. Especially with the cutscenes at that time, I think that's when cutscenes were really introduced. Obviously, the PS1 era, we got to see cutscenes. Not only did the PS2 era get to expand upon that, they got to put in longer cutscenes. And I know some people are like, I'd rather not. If I want to watch a movie, I could watch a movie. But I'm a sucker for a good cutscene. And there are so many amazingly, beautifully well done cutscenes from the PS2 era that have definitely not have aged at all, and almost looks as if they can come out in present day and honestly just look just as beautiful. So I loved being able to really see what the developers got to put out there and to experience those stories that they never probably thought they could just a couple years back. The PS2 era was also characterized by a willingness to try out novel gameplay concepts, leading to the development of numerous distinctive JRPG advancements and battle systems. The classic turn-based model that had shaped a large portion of the genre on previous platforms was no longer acceptable to developers. Rather, they looked for fresh approaches to draw gamers in during and after battle. Final Fantasy XII is a prime example of this experimentation, as it introduced the Gambit system, a new mechanism that lets players program their party members' actions during combat. By eschewing menu-based combat, this concept gave the game a more strategic, almost massively multiplayer online feel. Similar to this, Tales of Abyss included the free mobility during battles, extending the series' iconic linear motion battle system, and giving the JRPG formula a dynamic, action-packed twist. Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King is another noteworthy example of staying true to traditional turn-based battles, but pushing the frontiers of exploration. The expansive, open-world layout of the game with its vast fields and day and night cycles gave players a sense of adventure that was uncommon in earlier JRPGs. And of course, the gameplay, and I feel like the PS2 definitely, I think there's a huge common theme when I hear is that it was very experimental when it comes to the gameplay mechanics. When I think of an old school JRPG, I just think of its very standard turn-based mechanics, but because of the graphics, because of the hardware, and because of the new added software that they have for this console, they're allowed to be more elaborate and more complex and a lot more detail-oriented when it comes to the gameplay and mechanics, with the press turn combat or just being able to engage into the game in different ways. I think is such an interesting thing that we get to see in recent consoles in recent years, as well as how the developers have built upon that. And honestly, a lot of games have built the foundation because of the PS2 era in terms of gameplay and mechanics. The PS2 era saw the emergence of more experimental games and specialized subgenres in addition to the success of mainstream JRPGs. Hardcore fans of the genre were catered to with games like Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne and Disgaea Hour of Darkness, which introduced players to more difficult system-heavy experiences. Known for its severe difficulty and strategic combat centered around the press turn system, which rewarded players for taking advantage of enemy weaknesses, Nocturne was a post-apocalyptic, moody, and atmospheric role-playing game. Disgaea, on the other hand, gave tactical role-playing game a lighthearted and extravagant touch by letting players level up their characters to crazy heights and deliver ridiculous amounts of damage. Because of this replay value and profundity, it developed a cult following that helped launch a popular series. Even if they weren't always as financially successful as Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, these titles contributed to the genre's diversification and showed that JRPGs could appeal to a wide range of players. JRPGs become more widely distributed throughout the PS2 era. Many JRPGs that were originally intended to remain in Japan were now being localized for Western audiences due to the expanding popularity of the internet and easier access to games through international markets. Games such as Kingdom Hearts, which features Disney and Square Enix characters, were created with consideration for both Japanese and Western audiences. It was an enormous global hit thanks to its likable characters, engaging story, and combat that was easy to understand. Kingdom Hearts demonstrated that JRPGs could appeal to a worldwide player base and helped close the divide between Western and Eastern fans. During this time, localization efforts greatly increased, voice acting, better translations even became a standard both for Persona 4, Xenosaga, and the Trails or Kiseki series. Had excellent localizations that faithfully mirrored the original text, enabling non-Japanese players to fully enjoy the intricate storylines and nuanced character development that characterized these games. And as a JRPG lover of older times, when I mean older times, I mean in the 90s, sorry guys. But from the 90s on, I feel like there wasn't a market, especially here in the West, for JRPGs to really flourish because there wasn't really demographic for it. It wasn't until in the early to mid 2000s when people were starting to open their eyes more to the genre and more people were susceptible to it, and of course more people were playing games, hence why we got to see more games come to the West. I think thinking of how the Final Fantasy series started to blow up, as well as Kingdom Hearts. I know there's Square Enix games, but I definitely do think that before and for a while, the JRPG genre definitely got made fun of quite a bit from people, but the early adopters really did push the narrative of how great JRPGs are. And now we're here today, and there are JRPGs in almost any direct showcase or gaming event. And I think it's really cool to see how it kind of flourished in the PS2 era. People who were never even interested into the genre may have stumbled into a gaming store like GameStop or their local mom and pop shop and seen this box art like, this is really interesting, I want to know more. Or sometimes people just thought, oh, just Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Pokemon, I'm good. But then when they take to deep dive into the subgenres and the different nitty-gritty stories and the other gameplay mechanics, they might find something that they actually would truly enjoy. And I definitely do think the PS2 era, with its really wide array of catalog of games, it had something for everyone, regardless of what kind of gamer you were. JRPGs from the PS2 era continue to have an impact on contemporary gaming. Modern developers have built upon many of the advancements in world design, combat systems, and storytelling that arose during this period. A large portion of the design principles used in games such as Persona 5 and Final Fantasy XVI stem from the foundations established in the PS2 generation. In addition, remasters and re-releases of beloved PS2 JRPGs like Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster and Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD Remaster show how popular these games still are. These titles have endured because the PS2 era's unique combination of technological mastery, narrative complexity, and innovation. And I want to mention that a lot of the games that I've talked in this video, a lot of them are having remasters on newer consoles. Heck, a lot of the games that I want to play on the PS2, I have the Switch version. And if I really love the Switch version, I might possibly just get the PS2 just to see how the mechanics run on that kind of console, how it was supposed to be on the original console as well. And let's be real, the PS2, the graphics aren't something to run home about, but again, like for its time, it definitely was groundbreaking. For JRPGs, the PlayStation 2 era was revolutionary. It was a time when game makers pushed the limits of what the genre could do in terms of gameplay and storyline. With its 3D environments and emotionally charged stories that address mature issues, the PS2 contributed to the rise of the JRPG from a niche genre to a global hit. Future generations of gamers like myself and game producers are more motivated by the PS2 JRPG's era's legacy, which guarantees that its impact will last for many years. Overall, the PS2 is such an amazing console with such a huge collection of JRPGs that I'm excited to get my hands on and experience on my own for the first time, and of course maybe share with my opinions about them with you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video and joining me on this journey of me learning about the PS2 and the great JRPGs that came along with it. I would love to hear what is your favorite PS2 JRPG you've ever played, because a girl needs some recommendations to add to my collection. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you like this video, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye!